1. Miracle spots. A school of thought I subscribe to suggests that, when sifting through the piled-up masses of visual and sensory data seething from the brainstem to the eyes, we start from our most recent addition to the pile. Whatever is nearest to us, says this school of thought, should be the clearest and best way to real understanding from whatever perspective. Moral, visual, ethical, religious, so I'll start there. This morning I woke up early after going to bed late. The night was glowing black. I make it that way through lighting, meticulous lighting. I'm compulsive and often feel as though my existence, the living part of me that prefers life to death, is held in the balance, very tenuously, by an infinite series of minor variables, such as the quality of light in my apartment must be low, warm, never glaring, never stark. Levels of physical exertion at particular times of day must run in the afternoon or I start to panic. Or my exposure to other people's art ideas. I go over and over them, and they often plunge me into a state of existential despair and self-obsession that requires days and weeks and months of concentrated effort to counteract. I woke up repeatedly. Sleep was uneasy. When I opened my eyes, I saw first the yellow, gray, green wall with black shapes of hanging jackets that always seem like figures as I become lucid. Then the fire-like lamp under purple-gray scarf, the source of the glowing. I keep the lamp on, covered by the scarf for an important dimming effect, because I'm afraid not to see the space around me. I'm deathly afraid of being raped. I've been paranoid for months now, and this light is the consequence of my fear. When I got out of bed, it was a decision. I engaged my morning routine diligently, quiet and dark as possible in silence, mostly black with hints of glowing gray. Coffee increased the yellow warm glow. Radio news from my hometown NPR station. I don't like any of the other ones. Glowing screen, turn on the kitchen overhead light, and this really changes everything. Taupe advertisements are like little flower bundles of color across my countertop. If I squint my eyes, they look like corners of medieval manuscripts. Smoothies I also drink obsessively. Vegan protein powder with bundles of green things and self-righteous protestations of health equated with vague Eastern spirituality. The outside is much cooler than the inside I've created, color-wise that is, and I don't see this kind of intense warmth again until about 45 minutes later, when in a room full of kind people, I'm blinded by the sunrise. It's 7:50 a.m. I'm listening to a man talk. I like how the sun feels on the left side of my body, especially my face. After we all say what we need to say, I turn from the window and see that the room is not glowing, but blue and taupe again. The chairs are some sort of muddied cloth magenta, but they don't make the space any less blue. A man dressed in gray jeans and a white and gray striped collared shirt strikes up a conversation about art and intellectualism, of course. This is my fault. I always start this conversation. I wonder why he is so interested in me, and consider that it may have nothing to do with my ideas. He says something like, "I never would have thought to equate painting and writing with intellectual analysis." I reply that our culture doesn't value art as an intellectual discipline. I wonder if it should. Partially think that it shouldn't, but mostly think it should. The conversation turns to histories of education. The man explains to me how his son is studying under the classical educational model, which he tells me has to do with combining what he views as opposed or unrelated disciplines, the arts and sciences. I like talking to the man. He's interested in ideas. We walk to our cars together and linger uncomfortably in the morning sunlight. Concrete gray, I guess. We are in a business complex. The moment is not really gray at all. The concrete is lavender in the hot light, and the freeway to my left emerges on the periphery as a bouquet, squirming and bursting from the stems and leaves of the oaks planted all around the parking lot where we stand. It is a colorful moment in the middle of a bunch of skyscrapers. Two, untitled. Ugh, I can't work backwards because time keeps passing forwards. Move towards painting, not going back to painting, suggested 3 professors. I shouldn't consider my easel painting, a thing I'm doing again, as a devolving, retrograde kind of action. I should associate the move with future language. language that urges a keen focus on what is to come. I should work forwards, not backwards. Just writing this, considering the passage of time, memory, art, Proust, makes the comment weirdly simple, even though it sounded smart at the time. I repeated the words and nodded my head as I looked at my easel painting self-portrait that's weird and a little repellent, a little garish, the kind of garish Ivan Albright used to get criticized for. I cringe at it and cringe at how I've never just done one thing. Cringe at myself. It turns out that I can replicate a lot of painting styles, and when that's evident, when they're all right there together, it's ugly. A bunch of little monsters. It turns out painting isn't just born out of me, looking like one solid thing. Painting is a constructed communication. Painting is a constructed communication. The thing I follow when I paint is more complex than an image or a style. The thing is too complicated to explain. I digress in thought, hearing them and cataloging their perspectives while I look at my work and manage the room, everyone's behavior, hoping I'm as aware as I think I am. Erudite, udite, said in a robot voice. When I tell them I haven't actually finished Swan's Way, it is clear that my ignorance has offended the delicate sensibilities of some ultra-learned listeners. Well, you become educated by reading, said with a laugh and a brief scan of the room, eye contact made with other smart people, smart professors. Some approve and scoff, but it is hard to see their faces in the dark with all these lace curtains around. I pat myself on the back and take it, the derision, the criticism, like a good, smart girl. It rolls off and around me. You planned this. You knew it would happen. Happens every time, I tell myself. And you've got everyone kind of cornered here. They're under your microscope in your crit pit, and they don't even know it. I'm strangely calm and make absolutely zero eye contact. Looking back at this crit moment, I realize that my studio space is overwhelmingly a warm mauve, and laugh. Is this a meaningful convergence of Proust and me? A marker or signpost on the dark path I think I've taken? Or is it chaos reduced to a readable narrative by my mind? A mind which seeks to find its place, which seeks to justify itself in a hallowed hall, but finds itself carving out a hollowed cave in a dusty, empty old corner of a university that barely knows it's there. Me, my mind, You're not an intellectual, forcefully asserted, like an ultimate reminder for the beginning of the day. Before you get to work on your work, just remember you're not an intellectual. In the dusty morning light of your office, my head spins. Yesterday, only yesterday, you called me an intellectual flaneur, smiled and laughed. I did too. I felt so good, like I'd arrived. Why can't I just be cool and smart? As smart as you at least, smarter than you secretly. So cool I don't care. That's part of it, I guess. Gives power to leave and enter as I wish, or as I'm called. Which is it? You tell me everyone feels this way. No one is sure if they're smart enough to be here. It's just a part of this life. The life you've told me I already have. The life of what? An artist? A smart person? Someone at a university? Someone squatting in a university? Living on government money? A homeless scavenger opportunist living on the scraps of the nation's educational infrastructure? If this is true, this vague acceptance, then why do I plot so intensely? Plot to portray and exert myself into acceptance. And why does my plotting work so well? It wasn't until I shared this idea, shared this writing, compared myself to Proust, that anyone around here spoke to me about philosophy, my mind, and how it works. It was only after I shared this writing that anyone used the word intellectual in any relation to me, whether to name me an intellectual or to hold it in their mouths, letting it out just in the spaces around their heads, dangling it in front of me, refusing to bestow. If I belong here and have been so readily accepted in, ostensibly without my knowing it, then why might I have died a couple years ago, rather than comfortably assume my rightful place? Am I to think this is all some fault of mine? That I'm too resentful or insecure or fucked up in general to see and accept what I am? Is it because I take myself too seriously or not seriously enough? I am asking and begging, and I hear no answer, or hear such insane opposition in ideas in response. I am plunged into real chaos. The chaos of real lies, false confusion. As I anticipated, this project has begun to fall apart. I've become emotional, and this nice little structure I cobbled together, Proust and Kraus and chapters with titles and references and footnotes, has begun to collapse in on itself. It's kind of like all the trash and curtains tied together with ribbon and needle and thread that shroud me in my studio, setting its own rules by hitting people, falling on people, moving people. The dumb cunt doesn't and can't follow rules or stay in structures unless she builds them, I guess. She's wild. I've realized lately, though, that she can be wild and calm at the same time. She can rage and plan in one breath. She can diverge, fall, excuse herself into corners to cry and fix up, make strange comments at odd moments, and wait on consequence. Time to take it there. Jessie, finally, I've spent some silent time listening. I attach Conrad Aiken, Tesselte. I've chosen it to reflect the tone and scope of your long poem. What you say cannot be written. Because of that, it belongs to language as song, not text. But in the meantime, let me please warn you that you have been accepted already into and through the big doors of cognition, intellectuality, etc. The difficulties that you sing and are eloquent in telling are the cause/result of that acceptance. There is no official passport into those spaces, no professional plaque. No one there knows for sure that it is where they are. Alone, forgotten, misunderstood, not fitting in. What do you expect? Of course you are rejected. That goes with the territory you occupy, without wanting to dominate it, which is its particular and strange power structure. Fear of being raped, you claim. Yes. I know that fear deeply, too. Better would be power, respectability, honor, prestige, social protection, sure. Sorry, too late for those. Congratulations. Good luck with your responsibilities. Professor B. I received this email in response to what I have written in this text/poem so far. Some may agree with me that it is ambiguously complimentary. What exactly does it tell me? This email, the memo, written by my beloved mentor, a person I deeply and truly respect for a number of reasons. This memo reminds me, unfortunately, that it is again I who have become confused. Unbeknownst to me, I'm in. Congratulations. I'm an intellectual flaneur. Tap me on the head, seal me with your stamp. You say there's no plaque, but there is a plaque, a seal of recognition. The plaque also isn't a solid thing I can carry around with me as proof. It's intangible, but real. It comes out of my mentor's mouth. Like I said, language. This is no beetle in the box scenario. You let your beetle out and I can see it. It's the same as my beetle.
How are you?
We both speak of intelligence. My intelligence is wild, we agree. It cannot and should not be tamed. The problem, as I see it, is that even in this moment of recognition, far beyond my first mirror moment, far beyond the moment I shared with my ridiculously misappropriated hipster self in last week's mirror, you refuse to anoint me with the language of total acceptance. There's a tone of ridicule, an air of mockery that surrounds. Flaneur, congratulations, you're not an intellectual. I'm asking and I'm receiving. It's not quite the same as before. I'm not pet on the head softly for turning a good trick, jumping smoothly, softly through the hoop. I'm not openly critiqued or derided, just pinched and twisted with reminders. Pinched and twisted, touching, sex, hitting, cutting, the point. The point has begun to reveal itself through this soup of observed and thought information. The longer it simmers, the more it's reduced to a few recognizable things. Things you only see when you reduce this way, or when you step back so far from your experience that shapes and values and forms, faces and bodies are simplified, abstracted, and their weird, up-close differences seem less significant than their overall appearance, their overall function. The dumb cunt emerged to me in this way as I moved around her, went back into her, wrote her and drew her out, lived her, lived next to her. The dumb cunt, a young white slut with a brain she keeps in check, is a perpetual receiver of violence, a palimpsest that records each blow with a scar. In America, she's the ultimate victim, the victim we love to celebrate, the embodiment of postmodern womanhood, strong and capable, sort of, but also consumable and constantly in danger of being raped and slaughtered, infinitely fuckable, thin, demurely intelligent. This quietness is viewed as staid humility in intellectual circles. She replicates herself not through the mass media or Hollywood, though she exists in those spaces too, but mostly through academia and art where her image abounds. I think the reason smart women like I Love Dick so much is because they see themselves represented more accurately than usual. It's a fact of simple recognition. It's nice to hear my own stupid thoughts read aloud, my own smart thoughts read aloud, but it doesn't make them valuable, really. If the point I made in part 1, that I, as a dumb cunt, will forever be rejected from masculine white intelligence, then part 2 must deal more closely with the dumb cunt's real function in intellectual worlds, where ideas are generated, from which they are disseminated. I am a dumb cunt, not because that is my nature, but because of the things I have seen, read, reacted to, admired, including Chris Kraus's I Love Dick. I am like many women who work in the realm of ideas. I have adopted characteristics that allow me to move through this realm with some level of agency and some level of ease. But there will come a time when we must be much more subtle and much more honest than our predecessors. So I reduce the soup. I begin to back away from myself, from the dumb cunt, from the world and representations of the world and endless simulacra, the source of my appearance as the dumb cunt. From here, I can see the clods in the pot. I can see the forest and not just some of its trees. These are some of the conclusions I've reached. Kraus describes I Love Dick as a phenomenological portrait of the dumb cunt. I view this exercise in much the same way, minus dick habdage, without so much narrative fusion, and with more willingness to question the perceived power of the dumb cunt to see. Does she know what goes on around her? Really? Phenomenology is about consciousness. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy defines it as the study of structures of consciousness as experienced from the first-person point of view. The central structure of an experience is its intentionality, its being directed towards something, as it is an experience of or about some object. An experience is directed towards an object by virtue of its content or meaning, which represents the object, together with appropriate enabling conditions. So yeah, Kraus's dumb cunt has an experience from her consciousness. She expresses it. It's different from what we usually see, because we usually see smart white maleness. Kraus shows us smart white femaleness, which is constantly trying to be smart white maleness or to be accepted by it. What she sees when she looks out is ambiguous and strange. She sees her own mind and knows its power, and she sees her appearance in the world as the ludicrous vacuum that sucks up all of our cultural ideas of women. She acts as both. She has a consciousness that is not whole but split in the sense that Du Bois and Fanon describe as double consciousness, which Beauvoir adopted and made specific to what was ostensibly the white female body through the notion of se faire objet. For the girl, erotic transcendence consists in making herself prey in order to gain her ends. She becomes an object and she grasps herself as an object. She is surprised to discover this new aspect of her being. It seems to her that she has doubled herself instead of coinciding exactly with herself. Here she is existing outside of herself, says Beauvoir. John Berger put it this way: she has to survey everything she is and everything she does, because how she appears to men is of crucial importance for what is normally thought of as the success of her life. Her own sense of being in herself is supplanted by a sense of being appreciated as herself by another. One might simplify this by saying, men act and women appear. Kraus's dumb cunt experiences and performs in hyperbole the doubled consciousness expressed by Beauvoir, originally formulated by Du Bois and Fanon. Kraus uses the phrase dumb cunt 3 times, describing her perspective with an unflinching awareness of our broad cultural view of women who think, hang around with, sleep with, talk with, are taught by intellectual men of status. Under the gaze of the patriarchal eye, the dumb cunt may be viewed as the doubly conscious white woman, a white woman who sees how she is perceived and sees her reality as a subject. She remains conspicuously unaware of her own whiteness, however, and all of its implications. The word white is used to describe human beings 6 times in I Love Dick. In all the 6 instances, the word describes white men. Kraus presents herself as the dumb cunt society projects onto her, showing the sometimes gross manifestations of femaleness in the process. She describes her phenomenological understanding of the American intellectual landscape, and she's self-deprecating as she does so. She does not, however, turn away from the patriarchy and her criticisms of it fully enough to see herself implicated in its mechanisms. Simply saying the words old white men in power over and over again may show that I know how things work, I know who I really am deep down, but it excludes the primary actor in any construction of cultural criticism, the self. Kraus is white. She is a carrier of that type of insidious whiteness that pervades and destroys our respect for one another and will eventually destroy our society, but she doesn't want to acknowledge it. The fact is that Kraus's dumb cunt is the whitest of the white, worse than a fat, rich lawyer driving a gigantic white Denali and voting for Trump. She is worse because she has no ability to recognize in herself what she has no problem seeing in others. This hypocrisy is not merely an annoying, nauseating twist of American intellectualism. Its consequences are deeply damaging. We know as serious thinkers, as contemporary interdisciplinary philosophers, that praxis, as Marcuse calls it, proves the real power of understanding, if and only if it is enacted. We are able to practice what we preach as long as we are willing to observe our subjective understanding of the world, to criticize it using the same rigorous contempt with which we approach patriarchal structures, because we are patriarchal structures. Just because I recognize the patriarchy is bad, it doesn't mean I have any sort of power to amend it, refuse it, change it. I must begin to use my own body and mind and words to do so. My dumb cunt attempts to do this, first by acknowledging herself as a vehicle for the replication of white femininity, which is not limited to images of beaus and Victoria's Secret and manic pixie dream girls. Look at me, as I stand before you in all of my intellectual artist glory. I construct my whiteness in innumerable ways. Smart-sounding language, association with institutions, intellectualism period, my desperate attempt to fit into white intellectualism, my obsession over what to wear for this presentation, hoping I look thin and appealing enough while being offensive and radically feminist simultaneously, which is the embodiment of c'est fait objet. I argue that my dumb cunt, unlike Kraus's, is triply conscious. She is conscious of her own subjectivity, she is conscious of society's projections and expectations, and she is conscious of her complicity in constructions of white femininity. She refuses to deny this and remains rigorously aware of its manifestations, acting constantly to subvert them. This awareness must be as rigorous and critical as critiques of culture, society, the world. This third consciousness is actually more essential, as my agency beyond the limits of my own body dissipates exponentially. The rate of its dissipation seems to become infinite within feet of my corporeal frame. I must refuse myself in the way I refuse my cultural conditioning. There's no way that one can detach themselves from the cultural reflexes of their age. It will seep in. We will perform them. We must be primarily aware of our own adoption of these reflexes, physical, mental, habitual. This must precede opinion, the perspective of the subject. We must become subjects examining ourselves. Furthermore, it must be considered that some defects prefigure the projections and expectations of culture. Consider the alcoholic, the sociopath, the narcissist. Complicity is inevitable, and in order to be changed must first be noted. Refusal is only as functional as its practitioner's awareness, and humans are not omniscient. For every 3 patriarchy-programmed behaviors I refuse, there exist 1,000 more of which I remain blissfully unaware. It is this level of consciousness that empowers my dumb cunt, to a much greater degree than consciousness of how I am perceived. The implications of the dumb cunt's whiteness, noted above, are not the nebulous stuff of tangential, experiential musings. They aren't a subject for a gigantic tome of stream-of-consciousness diary entries about what it's like to be a woman trying to be seen as smart, who feels sorry for herself because smart guys don't take her super, super seriously. Beautiful language doesn't really cut it either, and clever stories are like a puzzle that obscures, can't be answered without the right philosophical, theoretical, smart knowledge. There is a mechanism at work in whiteness, here specifically in constructions of white femininity, that does something visible in American culture, if we step back far enough to see it. The dumb cunt, a constructed white femininity, is the visualized receiver of violence in the most prevalent narrative of American existence. This violence renders her dependent, and she must depend upon the power of white men, represented by institutions like hospitals, psych wards, prisons, police forces. She, by her weakness, reinforces the power of the patriarchy, its institutions. Violence against the dumb cunt, as well as her redemption by the care of the patriarchy, is constantly made visual by endless representations in the media, Hollywood and elsewhere. This narrative is consumed. Rhetorics develop around it like cultish chants. The language and imagery of Law & Order SVU are a good example. This violence against the helpless dumb cunt serves as a straw man for violence against non-white, non-female bodies in the American landscape. Our obsession with certain sublime stories of ultimate human depravity center the dumb cunt, the white woman, as perpetual victim. I conceive of whiteness as a disease. It infects a host and feeds upon that host until it dies, replicating itself in the process. For women, whiteness manifests as violence against the self often before the self receives violence from an outsider. An eating disorder, for example, functions to 1. Produce an image of accepted white femininity, and 2. Literally destroy the body of the host. Another example, self-injuring behaviors function to 1. Produce a white female victim in need of care by patriarchal institution, and 2. Literally destroy the body of the host. In the narrative of the American dreamscape, the endless stream of the white patriarch, the dumb cunt is hunted by the serial killer, a white man, the ultimate manifestation of evil. For the ultimate manifestation of victimhood. But like any good villain, the serial killer is not a groveling entity. He is perhaps the most powerful actor in the consciousness of the white patriarch. He is able to possess the dumb cunt, food for the disease of whiteness ad infinitum. And he always gets away with it. He is everywhere and nowhere at once. When he is caught and killed, this incident points only to our knowledge of the fact that he is one of many. So the dumb cunt, raped, tortured, and killed by the serial killer, becomes the primary level of nourishment for the white disease. Her narrative is real as much as it is a simulacrum. She is killed, the story is told, the image of her death appears again and again as the ultimate idea of terror, power, sublime, godlike power of America's Lucifer, the serial killer. Only the God-King patriarch, through his governments of institutions, like the FBI, CIA, police forces, prisons, and hospitals, can defeat the threat of the serial killer, defend and save the dumb cunt. It is easy to notice victimhood and its visual manifestations in places like Law & Order SVU. It has become popular among white feminists to disdain women who appear as the sex kitten victims of pop cultural consumption. This is common knowledge. Smart women somehow seem to think they've beat the game, that they've hit upon some way of looking that transcends the grasp of the patriarchy. But they haven't. In the case of smart women, white femininity manifests not as a blonde bimbo with a serial killer's knife sticking out of her silicone breast, but as self-consciously alternative intellectualism, paired with the staid, demure attitude of intelligent distance and basic hetero attributes like long hair and simple makeup, just so everyone gets the idea, as well as a desperate willingness to appeal to smart white men of status. Kraus obviously notes this need in herself, but doesn't seem to offer any mechanism by which such patterns might be curved. To Kraus, such ridiculousness seems to come with the territory, surprisingly uncritical. I've made a visual map of recognizable faces to help us recognize this pattern, how the Ted Bundy leads to, well, me. Here's Ted Bundy, imaged in the 70s. And Lucian Freud. Ted Bundy's victims. Now, Andrea Frazier. Hannah Wilkie. Carolee Schneeman. Marina Abramovich. Janine Antoni. And me. I'm funnier. So, what does the dumb cunt remember about violence? Did it ever point to anything, or is this phenomenology of the spirit of the smart white girl a fruitless, self-congratulatory effort, as bad as Kraus's, maybe worse because it attempts to involve others in its madness? I'm really not sure. That's why I continued looking, the phenomenological experiment that must turn back on itself for information, with its triply conscious shell of vision. is the tool of this project. Persistent, rigorous observation will continue to guide this effort.